We're going to get started very shortly, but I did want, prior to get going, to offer an apology. Rabbi Moskowitz and I were talking about the service, and as happens on occasion, crossed our wires. And so David Siegel, we didn't get the invitation extended to him to play tonight. So in your program, there's a spot for David to play, and he won't be playing, and it was our mistake, so I apologize. We're disappointed about that, but we'll try and invite him back another moment. So we'll begin our service, and I want to introduce Ariel Stiller-Schulman, who's one of the presidents of Havarim Hillel.
Thank you, Ginger. Can everybody hear me? Yeah. I sometimes wonder whether it's in human nature to hate people who are unlike you. I was quite disheartened watching a show on the Discovery Channel the other day when I saw an interview with a scientist who claimed that Cro-Magnon Neanderthals probably killed off Australopithecus. I thought to myself, maybe humans are innately drawn to hate those who are unlike them. Maybe it is a natural tendency to otherize, to dehumanize people who are not in your same culture, and to kill them. Certainly this is what happened in the Holocaust. In Nazi propaganda, Jews became either vermin or corrupt puppet masters. Gay people became asocial. Gypsies, Slavs, Jehovah's Witnesses, political dissenters, all except for Nazis were cast as non-human. This sort of lying to oneself, this extreme simplification of human existence into binaries of good and evil, us and them. This way of thinking was and is the only way for humans to rationalize killing other humans. So when people say the Holocaust happened over 60 years ago, I say no. As long as people dehumanize others, whether consciously or unconsciously, then the Holocaust lives strong. Its legacy survives in the hearts of all people who hate and those who are moved to instigate violence. The Holocaust still exists whenever people fail to recognize the bond of humanity that we all share. That is why it is so important that we are gathered here today. The ceremony of remembrance gives me hope that, through our shared commitment to remember, we do away with the hatred that is at the root of the Holocaust. Thus, it is my honor as president of our campus's Jewish student group to welcome you and to thank you all for your participation in our Holocaust Remembrance service. I also want to warmly thank Rabbi Zalman, who I had the pleasure of talking with earlier today, for gracing us with his wisdom for this service. And also, I'd like to tell you all that Havarim set up a display for Holocaust Remembrance Week, and it's to the southwest of this building, so if you want, when you leave, you can check it out. You'll see it on a tree towards the southwest corner of this building. So welcome, and thank you for coming.
Source of time and space, Avinu Malkeinu. From infinity draw down to us the great renewal, and attune us to your intent, so that wisdom, your daughter, flow into our awareness, to awaken us to see ahead, so we help instead of harm. May all the devices we make and use be sparing and protecting of your creation. Help us to set right what we debase, to heal what we have made ill, to care for and to restore what we have injured. Bless our earth, our home, and show us all how to care for her, so that we might live your promise given to our forebears, to live heavenly days right here on this earth. Kimei hashamayim al haaretz. May all beings whom you have fashioned become aware that it is you who has given them being. May we realize that you shaped our lives, and may each one who breathes join with others who breathe in the delight of sharing of the great breath of life. Assist us in learning how to partner with family, with our neighbors and friends. Aid us in dissolving old enmities. May we come to honor even in those whom we fear, your image and form, your light dwelling in their hearts. May we soon see the day when your house will indeed be a house of prayer for all peoples, named and celebrated in every tongue and speech. On that day, you will be one, and one with all of cosmic life. Amen. We are about to see some images here, and I have decided today to come and wear the outfit that I don't usually wear, because I wanted you to see not only museum pictures from the past, but to know that this lives today, that there are people who wear these outfits and who think deep thoughts and who care for things in the world. So I also brought my tallis, but it's getting hot. And I think I'll take off the shtreimel and put on a kippah and take off the kapote and stand here a lot more like Tevye, you know? And so let's go and take a look and listen to the words that come from Leonard Bernstein's Kaddish Symphony, which is a very powerful statement that comes from that experience of the Holocaust.
O my Father, ancient, hallowed, lonely, disappointed Father, betrayed and rejected ruler of the universe, angry, wrinkled old majesty, I want to pray. I want to say Kaddish. My own Kaddish. There may be no one to say it after me. I have so little time, as you well know. Is my end a minute away? An hour? Is there even time to consider the question? It could be here while we are singing, that we may be stopped once for all, cut off in the act of praising you. But while I have breath, however brief, I will sing this final Kaddish for you, for me, and for all these I love, here in this sacred house. pray, and time is short. Yitgadal ve'yitgadash shemeh Rabbah. Magnified.
It's powerful when you see the images and you hear those words that Leonard Bernstein wrote as his Kaddish symphony after the Holocaust. It was his way of speaking about, do we have time? He wrote it during the height of the Cold War. Remember the times when we were wondering whether the shelters would get us to survive during that time. And so he gave us the experience of how close death was to us. And now it has reached us in the Twin Towers. And as we heard before, the Holocaust is still happening in Darfur. And it happened in Rwanda, and for the Igbos, at Pol Pot. One could go on and on and on. And we said, this must not happen again, and it still is happening again. So there's so much that could be said about how we know things and don't act on them. That there still is not a world court to which even our country would submit. As if justice was only for people whom we have vanquished and not for us. There's so much to think about. I want to tell you I'm a little disappointed. How do you say disappointed in Yiddish? Everybody asks. Enttäuscht. Enttäuscht. Ich bin sehr enttäuscht. Why am I disappointed? Because I'd expected this to be a hall full of students. So I declare you to be honorary freshmen. Because so many times when you have people talk about the Holocaust, they go and talk about the terrible atrocities, and they were terrible atrocities. But I want you to know why there were such terrible atrocities, because they dealt with some people and with a culture that is no longer. In Yiddish we would sing a song, was ist gewesen, is mehr nicht da. Whatever was, is no longer with us. So I want to bring you into the life that preceded the Holocaust. Pesach is over. And here we celebrate our going out from slavery into freedom. And we have not yet, in the Holocaust memorial things that we do, we talk about those who were taken from us. But I think we need another piece in the Haggadah to sing the Dayenus that happened to us recently, more recently in history, to say, we thank God for those who survived the She'erit HaPleita, and for us who are here. Because they would sing in Germany, Heut gehört uns Deutschland, morgen die ganze Welt. Today we own Germany, tomorrow the whole world. And it could have happened that way too, had they gotten the bomb before we did. Professor Heschel gave a remarkable speech at the Jewish Yiddish Wissenschaftliche Institute, the YIVO. He gave it in Yiddish. It was a eulogy for Eastern European Jewry. I'd like to read you some of his beautiful words. The Jews in Eastern Europe lived more in time than in space. It was as if their soul was always on the way, auf dem Weg, as if the secret of their heart had no affinity with things. It is rarely given to an artist to convey their spirit in color and in line. It's so interesting when you see Chagall and his paintings. And even he, at one point, has no other way of depicting our problems but by painting a crucifixion. Do you remember his picture? So Heschel says, we don't do so well in color and in line, but a nigun. A nigun. What is a nigun? A nigun is a tune flowing in search of its own unattainable end. When you come to the end, it starts all over again. It doesn't ever finish. A maise. What's a maise? A maise is a story in which the soul surprises the mind. The soul surprises the mind. A knetch, the subtle shading of a thought, or a fervent gesture which puts a situation as if in divine quotation marks. This might express a lot better what they were about. He was a unique type of person, the Jew in Eastern Europe, one whose habits and tastes didn't conform to the classical standards of beauty, but who nevertheless was endowed with a wistful charm. One whose physiognomy was not like a passage in an open book, a static picture of uniform lines with definite proportions, text, and margins, but like a book whose pages are constantly turning. He has such a beautiful way of expressing that. Sometimes they talk about it, that our notion of beauty differs from the notion of beauty of the world. Do you know Moshe? Moshe? Don't know Moshe. Moshe pintelt mit an Oig, you know, he's cross-eyed. No, I don't know him. Moshe cross-eyed and he limps on one leg. Don't know him. You don't know Moshe, cross-eyed, limps on one leg. He also has a hoika, a bent back. Oh, he, a shena yid. Do you get the idea? Professor Heschel is trying to say what a beautiful Jew this man is. Yeah? So apparently it's not the outer thing that he was talking about. I want to say that as strange as it is, the Holocaust in Europe was only one in a series. When we were in Egypt and our children were being drowned in the Nile, when we had to work in labor camps then, going out of Egypt was a relief. When the first temple was destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar, when the second temple was destroyed by Titus, when the expulsion came from Spain and before that the Crusades against the infidels, and we were the first ones they found yet in the Rhineland on the way to the Holy Land. The expulsion from Spain, Khmelnytsky's massacres. We experienced things, but I want you to look with me at another side. Imagine a tree. It's a good, beautiful tree. And sometimes it has to be trimmed. and new growth comes. And the new growth that came after Egypt was our receiving the Torah. The new growth that came after the destruction of the first temple. It was an amazing time. People call it the time of the axial age. In Greece, you have Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. In our neighborhood, you had Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel. In Iran, you had Zarathustra. In India, you had Mahavira and Buddha. In China, you had at that time Lao Tzu and Confucius. What was going on at that time? It is as if a blip on the radar of the global brain was that a certain kind of enlightenment came after the destruction of the first temple. After the destruction of the second temple, a whole rabbinic hegemony began. Great Talmudic creation was there. Christianity grew from another part of that tree. Later on, Islam. And there were the people who were known as the Yordei Merkabah, the Merkabah mystics. We continue. Time of the Crusades, and there was Maimonides, and there was Yehuda HaChassid in Regensburg, with their beautiful spirituality that grew, shall I say, as a response to the terrible times. And after the expulsion from Spain, they started to gather in Safed and created a fantastic mysticism. And so too it happened after Khmelnytsky's massacres. There was the Baal Shem Tov and Hasidism came about. Is there something like that in store for us? A kind of renewal, renaissance of the spirit that we can hope for at this time? I leave it with this question for the time being. I grew up in Vienna. I was born in Żolkwy, in Galicia, not too far from Lvov. I grew up in Vienna, and on Kristallnacht, I was on the second day after an appendectomy in the Rothschild Hospital in Vienna. And I saw whom they had brought in at that time with bayonet wounds. And then, after the doctors toiled for hours to sew him up again, gave him blood, a Gestapo person came, ripped off the bandages, and he bled to death right in the ward where I was at that time. So I experienced that. I wasn't far away from it. We fled to Belgium. I came to France. In France, I was in 2 camps for refugees. I wasn't so happy there either. We came to the United States the day before Passover in 1941. How wonderful it felt for me to be here. And I still feel every 4th of July that I want to say Shehechianu v'kimanu v'gian lazman hazeh, that there is this home which halavai it should be the home for the free and for the brave. That it should be the kind of country that would, as in the second stanza of American the Beautiful, speak of hewing to the law and to the right kind of way of dealing with its citizens. Later on, I had the opportunity, this was in the 80s, to be in Tübingen in Germany. I was invited to teach there. And I want to tell you, for all the feelings that Jews often have had about going back to Germany, or shall we buy a Volkswagen or not, remember those days? That when I came back and I found the students there so eager to find out. I once gave a talk in German, and then in the middle, meine Herren und Damen, ich will mit Ihnen auch in mein Mameloschen sprechen. I said to them, I switched from German into Yiddish, and they understood, and I wanted them to understand, to see what the culture was. Who were those people? I found in Poland later on that there was a resurgence of klezmer music. They pronounce it klezmer, because in German a Z is pronounced Z, yeah, klezmer music. I took an old collection that was yet from before the Holocaust and played those as you came in, and I hope that you were able to give ear to it. Later on the way out, I have a collection of more modern ways in which a fusion of klezmer and rock can come together. So when I was teaching there, it was so wonderful to see how eager they were to understand, and they also experienced what it meant to be children of people who were in the SS and the guilt that they carried. They so wanted to absorb everything that they could into themselves of what I could teach them about Judaism. In Vienna, where I grew up, there was a section that was known as the Zweite und der 20. Bezirk, the second and the 20th precinct of Vienna, which was between the big Danube and the Danube arm known as the Donau Canal. You smile, you recognize it, yes? The Gentiles called it the Matze-Insel, the Matze Island there. And that was a whole Medina for itself. It was a whole country for itself. And if on Shabbos you would walk through, you would see people dressed like I am dressed here tonight. There were the Hasidim, and I knew the various Rebbes, the Chotke, Vadohus, Yatana. I'll just mention the name, the Sadegera, the Kopichenitsa. These were all Hasidic masters there with their disciples. And that was that culture. And they taught, and people davened, prayed with fervor. Other Hasidic masters came to Vienna because Vienna was seen in those days as the court of last resort for medical issues, das Allgemeine Krankenhaus. And there is even a story about how the father of the father-in-law of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, whose image you saw here before, had come to Vienna and consulted Sigmund Freud, and there was a whole wonderful exchange that went through between the two of them. There were other religious Jews in Poland and in Eastern Europe at that time. There were the yeshivas, the deep study that they did in Slobodka and Mir in Novorodok, when people would want to speak about who is the saint that everybody could call a saint, they would speak about the Chofetz Chaim, Rabbi Yisrael Meir HaKohen. So wonderful it is that we have his picture today. And he wrote a book called Shmirat HaLashon, Watching Your Tongue, Guarding Your Tongue. And in Israel, you may see hanging over the telephones of many families a picture of the Chofetz Chaim still today, yes? He died in 36, but he is still saying, watch your tongue. What a wonderful culture that was, that made sure that our moral and ethical life was intact. There were also secular Jews, and I don't want to go over without mentioning them. You know, it wasn't all Streimlach and Kapotes. There was Sholem Ash. Many people haven't forgiven him for having written the books about the Nazarene, the Apostle, and Mary. He wrote in Yiddish books about Jesus, about Paul, and about Mary. But you know, with a twist, So that when you read those books, you have a sense that Jesus was sort of like a Hasidischer junger Mann, very close to the Braslover Hasidim. And when you talk about Paul, the dialectician, arguing his way through some very abstruse ideas, a Litvische yeshiva bocher. And if you want to find out who was Mary, oi, a Yiddische Mame, you know? So, but people didn't forgive him for having written that. There was Peretz, who told these wonderful Hasidic tales about the master who doesn't show up in shul, and people ask, where is he? And they say he is in heaven. And there's this Litvak, he's from Missouri, and he follows and runs after the Rebbe to see what he's doing, and he is coming out in the middle of the night when they are praying slichas, and he is dressed like a Polish peasant, and goes into the woods, picks up wood, makes a bundle and brings it to an old widow who is sick, and plays as if he is a Polak, and she says, who are you, where are you? And he says, I'm Yvonne. What do you want, Yvonne? I want to sell you some wood. I haven't got any money. You have a good God. He'll give you the money later. I can't even get up and make a fire, so I'll go and make a fire for you. And he goes in and makes her the fire, and over the fire he recites the prayers that they say in the synagogue. The Litvak comes back, and they say, where's the Rebbe? And they say, he's in heaven. And the Litvak says, if not higher. If not higher. A story by Peretz. He had such a wonderful way of telling you things. He even has a science fiction story. A Reise in der Zeit, it was, a journey through time. There was Mendele, and there was, of course, Shalom Aleichem, whom we know from Fiddler on the Roof. There was Bialik and Chernichovsky, poets who wrote in beautiful Yiddish and in Hebrew, creating a language, a new language, with their poetry. There were the Bundisten, people who were socialists, who were anarchists, who were communists, who were Zionists. What did they want? They wanted to bring Mashiach, their own kind of Mashiach. And so people would be talking about the socialists, how they want to bring the Reuten Mashiach, the red Messiah. And if you look in the early years of 20s and 30s in the garment district, and the people who grew up among the Jewish union leaders in the United States, and you call them red diaper babies. You remember that expression? Solidarity. And what would they sing? Das wird sein schon der letzte unentschiedener Kampf for der Internationale. In Yiddish, they would sing that in the hope to create a better world. And some of them were Zionists, and they came with their dream to build kibbutzim, to reclaim the land, to dry up swamps. And I remember how I went around with little pushke to collect for the Jewish National Fund so we could buy land. Not only the great writers and poets and rabbis and teachers, but there were also Poshet Yidden, simple Jews, tailors, shoemakers, balagulis. Balagule. That means somebody who had a couple of horses and a wagon and made his living that way. And we had all kinds of stories about them. There were some secret saints who traveled around, very learned people, very holy people, but they didn't let anyone know who they were. They acted as if they were simple laborers. They were known as the tzaddikim nistarim, and we still speak of the 36 righteous people. The 36 righteous people without whom the world couldn't exist. Every time I give a lecture to people who are Jewish educators, I ask them the question, do you have a curriculum? Do you have a way in which you can create the formation to create the Lamed Vovnikas, which we will need in the year 2050? You know what I'm saying? We don't have, our schools have given up building character and developing souls, and we need that to happen so that we should have the leadership and the people who will honor our Mother, the Earth. So I want to say we have lost a lot. We have lost a lot. I can't imagine that someone should have, in Poland, asked the question, is there such a thing as Jewish meditation? Why? Because there was plenty of it around. Do you want to meditate with the Chabadniks or with the Braslaver, or do you want to go with the Piasetzner or with the Gerach Hasidim? Because they all had the spiritual disciplines detailed out. And we lost it. Do you see how difficult it was for people who came here after the Holocaust? They first had to rebuild the infrastructure for themselves. They gathered wherever they could, in enclaves like in Williamsburg and Borough Park, in New Square, and in all those places, in order to make sure that they should have the kosherness that they want, that they should have the houses of prayer that they would want, and just to make sure that the physical plants for all these things were here. Many of whom who had survived were in their teens in the labor camps, and by the time they came here, they had missed out on the education they would have gotten had they been in a peaceful time in their land. I came to see the Munkacher Rebbe and asked him at one point if he would like to see, because he is one who grew up in New York. You remember seeing The Chosen and how they played stickball there? Well, so it was that he too grew up in America, and I asked him if he would want to see some of the young people, and he says, I can't afford the time. I am busy to make up the time with those people who had lost it during those years in the camps and in hiding. So it was very hard to build this up. We had a session once in Berkeley that was entitled Torah and Dharma. Let me spell that out. I don't mean Kishke here, okay? Dharma. Dharma is a Sanskrit word which means the right teaching. And usually it's applied to teachings in Buddhism and in Hinduism. So we had such a meeting in Berkeley. I asked my friend Reb Shlomo Karlebach, the troubadour, storyteller, inspirer of so many people, if he could come, and he had an engagement at that time, so he couldn't meet me then. So I asked him, would you please record something for me? And he did. He said, it is written that a Kohen, one from the priestly family, is not allowed to deal with corpses, to deal with the dead. And so the question is, why not? So the Ishbitzer Rebbe teaches that it is very difficult to learn about God from a person who is angry with God. What's the anger? The anger is, why do we have to die? Why does anyone have to die? When you face that, you get angry with God. And so a Kohen who has to be teaching the teachings that it says, for the lips of the Kohen, they guard the knowledge. So he isn't supposed to contaminate himself with the dead. But after the Holocaust, we all have become contaminated by death. So who is going to teach us about spirituality? So God, caring for us, sent us teachers from the Far East who at that point weren't angry with God to teach us. That was his way of explaining why it is that so many Jews look for the hyphenations between Buddhism, Bujus, and Hindus, and Jufis, and so on and so forth, the hyphenated people. We had gone through a very difficult pruning during that time. It is wonderful that we have found some people, like the Rebbe of Piaseczno, who lived in Warsaw. When he was about to be deported, his wife and son were already dead by that time, and he was in the ghetto in Warsaw. He still was teaching. And what he was teaching at that time, he wrote down. And then, just before they came to take him to Treblinka, he took his writings and wrapped them into a tin box and hid it in the rubble in Warsaw, with a letter in which he said, please, anyone who finds this, send this on to Palestina in those days, send it on to Israel, to this and this address. So this was his testimony. The book was found afterwards, and it was translated. Elie Wiesel is teaching at Boston University. He has a chair there, and one of his students did a translation and a dissertation on that book that was found in Warsaw. I'll read you just a couple of lines from a teacher who was teaching in the very midst of the dark time. Again and again, in observing the pitiless behavior of the Jew haters, there's always something unique in their savagery towards Jewish children. Whether, God forbid, they want to kill them or whether they're trying to force them to convert, as we know from all the decrees of the previous hundreds of years. Oh, how it breaks our hearts to witness this now too. For with all the unrelenting, pitiless cruelty and murderous ferocity, too awesome to describe, being poured out in the house of Israel, the savagery, without compassion shown, our small sons and daughters outweighs everything. Oh, woe, what has happened to us. It isn't just that the plot, God forbid, to exterminate all Jewish children, but when children are killed, it also affects the parents and grandparents who are already in the Garden of Eden. You see how he, in the midst of that time, hasn't given up faith that there is a Garden of Eden, that there is an afterlife, and he held on to that, and he was teaching to those people who would come to his house at that time. Remember the song they used to sing? Sag nicht keinmal, du gehst dem letzten Weg, als Himmeln bleierne, verstellen blaue Tag. Noch kommen wird doch vor die ausgebänkte Schau. Es wird abbeugt an unser Tod, wir sennen do. It was saying, don't say this is the last walk that you're going. There will be at a time when our footsteps will announce that we are still here. And I want to talk about what happens after that pruning. Because all religions are undergoing difficulties today. Our Catholic brothers have just experienced the difficulty of having a pope chosen whose track record has been very much like the political track record in this country at this point. Not quite friendly to souls who are suffering, to the poor, and to the environment. What's necessary for all religions? What is so necessary for Islam at this time? It's such a beautiful, wonderful, holy religion, and look what's happened to it at this point. Why is it not that I would hear Sunni imams crying out and saying at this time, stop the bloodshed. This is not Allah's will to do. Why is that moral voice not heard today? So, these are problems. How do we respond? How do some of us respond? So I mentioned to you before that after every one of those prunings and trimmings, there is growth happening. And I am involved in this kind of growth for Judaism in a movement called Jewish Renewal. We are interested in bringing a notion that was once in the Kabbalah called Tikkun Olam, to fix the world, to repair the world, and to make this something that would happen in society today. I once gave a series of lectures on the Kabbalah of Tikkun Olam. What is the mysticism behind that, so that we could see the larger picture? I coined the term eco-kosher. It isn't enough that something should be kosher. Is it ecologically kosher? Imagine, according to regular kosher, styrofoam cup, fresh, unused. Oi, kosher wie die Welt. What's going to happen to the cup afterwards? Not so kosher. Okay? So, isn't it better to use a cup that may have been used and washed than to use a cup that then is going to create landfill that will not biodegrade? So today we are beginning to do something, including a kosher seal that will have eco-kosher, and we are banding together with other faith groups to create such a thing. And Kellogg Foundation has given to Jewish Renewal a grant to help getting this started. That's a way in which to respond to the pruning. There are Jews for urban justice. Something remarkable has happened in Israel. Remember lately hearing about stem cell research and the arguments that are that you cannot harvest stem cells and so on. Well, Orthodox rabbis have over 15 years ago, when this first became a possibility, ruled the following way. Shofech dam ha'adam be'adam damo yishafech. If you spill the blood of a person while yet being in that person, in other words, a fetus, that is a wrong. But growing in a petri dish, the cells, does not constitute creating a fetus. And they have been 10 years ahead in stem cell research with the possibilities of being able to help. I find it so amazing and wonderful that so many of the teachers in the other movements of renewal religion, like in Buddhism, let me read you some of the names, the usual suspects that you find on that list. Bernie Glassman, Lama Surya Das, I forgot what his born name was, Weinstock maybe, Jack Kornfield, Joseph Goldstein, Sharon Salzberg, Sylvia Burstein, these are the Buddhists. And I want to say something about those Buddhists. Those are Buddhists who are saying after the ecstasy, the laundry. You know, there are people who are saying that it's not enough to let the head fly away far, but without bringing it down to earth and creating tikkun olam even there. Sometimes people are saying, oy vey, what are they doing there? They should be doing here. They don't realize that this is part of what needs to happen at this time. There is this kind of thing of making each other fruitful. People sometimes are worried about in the past we were so worried about intermarriage, and we had good reason to be worried. If I start looking at some of the most active people in some of the congregations. I find that they are intermarrieds who became Jews and who have become the most active members in the community. What's going on? Because those of you who have heard of reincarnation, often it happens that I meet people whom Gene Houston would call psycho-Semitic. Psycho-Semitic. People who are not born Jewish, but they have such an affinity for hanging out with Jews. Why? What's going on here? And the answer is that many of them are recycled souls. They never went out during the Holocaust years, and they have come back with the hope that we mustn't let this happen again. And so they're the ones who work for peace, who are in Move On, who are working for ecology, who are in Doctors Without Borders, and all these people have had that experience of saying, we are here, and we have to do that. So, what's going on? The Kabbalah Research Foundation, a red thread that you can buy on the internet today, the real stuff. Don't buy any what's the word, substitutes for that, their website says. But you know, I'm not putting them down either. Because it means something if Madonna says, I haven't found that which gives me reason to live elsewhere, and I'm glad to find it here. I'm not speaking because I want to say Judaism über alles, you know, because this is not the time for triumphalism. You know what triumphalism is? We used to say the following: you just wait, Mashiach will come and oi will the goyim get it. They were wrong all along and we'll show him, yeah? Not too far from here, there's a family foundation that will say, you just wait until the second coming, and you're going to find out you were wrong all along. And there's some Muslims who are saying, you just wait until that last imam shows up, and you'll find out that you were wrong all along. Or the last avatar, you know, there's always somebody. Maitreya, the last Buddha, is going to come and show you were wrong. Today, this can't work anymore. What can work for us today is that our mother, the earth, Gaia, is alive. And in order to keep her alive, she needs to have healthy, vital organs. And every religious tradition is a vital organ of the planet. And what we need to do as Jews is to be the best Jews we can be, which is like saying, if I can make the liver good and healthy, it'll help the heart. All religions need to undergo a paradigm shift and come to this time and let go of the old disputations that were in the past and start looking to the future. Most religious leaders are driving by the rearview mirror. It can't work for them. I do hope that Benedict XVI will look ahead and look through the front and not through the rearview mirrors in his papacy. And I want to say this to us Jews too. We need to know the tradition. We need to know, Habitu el tzur chitzavtem. Look to the rock whence you were hewn. Know where you come from. Know how precious the past was, but we don't live there anymore. We have to move to our future. I wish for you, and I want to give you a broche. This country happens to be at this point underblessed. You know, underblessed life is like empty calories. So I want to give you a blessing, and everyone over 60 should learn how to be a good blessing giver. It's very necessary to start to learn to give blessings. So I want you to have a blessing. For me, it was a blessing to be here with you. I wish you a good night. I'd like to have that music on, which is the klezmers for this time, unless something has to be said first.
We have a little bit more.
I have a little more
No,
time?
we have a little bit more.
Okay,
to
so
do.
I'm gonna sit down.
Okay, blessings, thank you. At this time, we're going to light the memorial candles. So we have this evening 11 candles, which represent different groups of people who were targeted and killed by the Nazis. And so as I mention the groups, I'll ask those who have volunteered to light candles to come forward. Tonight we remember the Jews. And we remember the Roma Sinti people known as the Gypsies. We remember the Poles and the Slavs. We remember the physically and mentally disabled. We remember male and female homosexuals. We remember the Jehovah's Witnesses. We remember individual religious leaders and believers. Bruce. We remember Polish intellectuals and Catholic priests. We remember social democrats. We remember law and rule breakers who were labeled nonconformist. And we remember women and children. And when Zuri finishes, she'll come and lead us in the commitment to remember.
We remember our 6 million who died when madness ruled and evil darkened the earth. We remember those of whom we knew and those whose very names are lost.
We cherish the memory of those who died as martyrs, those who died resisting, and those who died in terror.
We mourn for all that died with them, their goodness and their wisdom, which could have done so much to ennoble and enrich humanity. We mourn for the genius and the wit that died, the learning and the laughter that we lost. We salute those men and women who had the courage to stand outside the mob, to save us and to suffer with us. They too are God's witnesses and a source of home when we are tempted to despair. In silence, we remember those who sanctified God's name on earth. Thank you.
If you would rise and say the Kaddish with me.
Amen. חיי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב, ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולמי עמיה. וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי דקודשה בריחו. מאלה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דאמירן בעלמא ואמרו אמן. יהי שלום רבה מן שמיה, וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום, עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. Amen. Auschwitz, Lodz, Ponar, Babi Yar, Meidnik, Birkenau, Kowano, Janowska, Theresienstadt, Buchenwald, Treblinka, Vilna, Bergen-Belsen, Mauthausen, Dachau, Minsk, and Warsaw. It is in our moment of most pain, it is in the moment that we stand through our tears, it is a moment through courage that we proclaim God and we thank God for the gift of life.
You know what? It's a good time to give hugs to the people next to you. And put that klezmer music on.